our goal is to try to work with multiple stakeholders to create a win-win situation for everyone so that a sustainable change in the right direction is possible. And a classic example of that is our Feeding Focus program, a dairy program that we have currently in the US. And in that program, we are working with multiple actors across the supply chain to make the sustainability journey easier as well as meaningful for everyone involved.
Hello, welcome to the third in our sustainability series of podcasts on the Wisenetic family of podcasts. My name is David Dayhoff. I'm the Sustainability Director with DSM Firmenich Animal Nutrition and Health. And my guests today are from the Nature Conservancy. Welcome to both Partha Ray and Kelly Racette.
Hi, David. Nice to see you and nice to be here today.
Yeah, thank you, David. Nice to be here.
Great. No, I really appreciate you guys taking the time. And, as we talked a little bit about this podcast, this is an opportunity to talk to a lot of people that work in production animal agriculture and try and share some interesting topics with them that might round out some more parts of what's going on in animal ag that they don't get some exposure to first. So I think what would be helpful first is that, I think a lot of people have heard of the Nature Conservancy. But why don't first tell me a little bit about the Nature Conservancy and what is your role with the Nature Conservancy as well?
So maybe I can kick us off here. So for the audience here, my name is Kelly Racette. I am a senior scientist for agriculture on TNC's Global Corporate Engagement Team. So what that means is I help support the work that TNC does with the private sector, helping to translate science and some of the really great information that's out there about sustainability for companies so that we can help them do the right things for the planet and for the people that live here.
I am Partha Ray. So I am part of Corporate Engagement Science and Standards team, the same team with Kelly. And I've been with TNC for almost 3 years now. And my background is animal science and veterinary science. So my primary role is to provide technical and scientific input and insight into the development of sustainability program for companies where we try to help them develop strategies, but also help them implement programs on the ground. So that way, GHG, greenhouse gas emission footprint and water footprint and any impact on nature could be reduced for the livestock production system.
Great. No, well, you'll be happy to know there's typically a lot of veterinarians or animal science people that will be listening to this too. So I'm happy. I'm not an animal scientist, so I'm very glad to have one join me on the call here.
When consumed through the feed acidifiers modulate the pH of the gastrointestinal tract with acids in nutrient digestibility. Research has shown that by including acidifiers in diet, you can increase average daily gain, increase average daily feed intake, improve feed conversion, reduce the pH of digesta. Vivo Vital from DSM Firmenich is an ultra-pure form of benzoic acid that when used as a feed acidifier has shown to improve post-weaning pig performance. Learn more at dsm.com/Vivo Vital.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about the Nature Conservancy generally and what TNC tries to do? And then people may not know that there's an agriculture group and programs within TNC. So please tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So TNC, or the Nature Conservancy, is one of the world's largest conservation nonprofits. So we're currently active in all 50 states and more than 70 countries around the world. We have this vision of creating a world where both people and nature thrive together. So we're laser focused on tackling the dual climate and biodiversity crises. And mostly we do that by partnering with different communities and finding solutions and a way forward together. So we started actually, though, as a land trust back in the early 1950s. And back then, our guiding principle was really around protecting the last great wild places, especially in the U.S. But in the early 2000s, I guess it was, we realized that we really needed to work beyond the fences of those preserves in order to make the impact that we wanted to see in the world. And so, that means for us working globally, working with communities in more than just the United States, and also working with key stakeholders like farmers, ranchers, fishers, and companies in a productive and mutually beneficial way for both people and nature.
No, that's great. Anything you want to add to that, Partha?
Yeah, I think Kelly did a good job providing an overview. But I mean, whatever we do, we really rely on science. Whether we are working with companies or we are helping farmers implement practices on the ground, or we're working with other farm advisors or co-ops. Whatever our recommendation is, we rely heavily on the science, so that way we make sure that it's credible and it is really a sustainable long-term solution to the challenges that the folks on the ground are facing, but also we are facing at the global level, the climate impact or the nature impact. So yeah, we try to make sure that our solutions, our recommendations are credible, so that way it goes long run.
So Kelly, you used an interesting term a minute ago about beyond the fences of the nature preserves themselves. So describe a little bit more about like the agriculture work and the program kind of work and the priorities for TNC actually working with the agriculture industry in the U.S.
Yeah, definitely. So I think our ag work really came as a result of this realization that just protecting nature and just protecting those wild places wasn't really enough to motivate everybody else to feel the way about nature that we do, right? So we started to recognize that, we needed to help people sort of see and then tap into the value of nature, not just for fulfilling our needs as people, but also for enriching our lives. So we actually looked to the agricultural community as some of the largest stewards of nature. We know that farmers, ranchers, and fishers are responsible for stewarding like a large portion of the natural resources on the planet. And so we want to work together with them to kind of optimize those systems so that it can both serve nature and their businesses as farms, and our larger food system as a whole. So looking to try to enact some transformations that will create systems that benefit both people and nature, basically.
That's great. And I think it says something that, um, you know, this NGO has people like you as an agronomist or a soil scientist and, an animal scientist, veterinarian, those kinds of people. Can you talk a little bit more just about the team in North America? Like how big is your agriculture team? And if maybe there's a few specific projects or key priority areas or programs that you'd like to mention?
I can start with that. So, as you said, we do have special subject matter experts, agronomists or crop advisors. We have animal scientists. We have a team that is dedicated to agriculture with a subject matter expert, but also we have a team that works with, try to help us engage with the companies in that ag space or animal ag space. So that way we can build a relationship with them and we can help them develop their sustainability program or regenerative agriculture program and reduce the climate impact or the nature impact along their supply chain. So our team, like as an organization, has grown over the last few years exponentially. We have total at the global scale, like more than 5,000 employees now at TNC. And as I said, we really rely on science for whatever we do, whatever we recommend. So we have almost like 500 scientists now working on different subject areas that are kind of allowing us to work with those companies and other stakeholders on the ground to kind of help them develop the program, but also implement those sustainability programs on the ground, which will allow us to reduce the impact of agriculture or animal agriculture on nature or climate.
Some of the programs that are really specific to animal agriculture are things in the livestock industry?
Yes, we do work with the livestock sector. Our primary focus here in the US is primarily ruminant system. So we work with the dairy sector and the beef sector, but within the beef production system, we try to focus primarily on the grazing land. So which will probably align with more like the cow-calf operation phase of the total entire beef production system. So yeah, dairy and beef are the two major focus areas for our animal ag work here in the U.S.
Yeah, and maybe I can add to that. I think these projects in animal agriculture, especially, can look very differently depending on which levers we're trying to pull to try to influence that sustainability of the system. So TNC works on everything from helping farmers and ranchers troubleshoot, putting conservation practices on in their operations, all the way to trying to influence Congress to include more incentives or more money for conservation within the Farm Bill. So we're working on a lot of different kinds of things to try to get that conservation happening on the ground.
And if I can add to that, like in terms of animal ag, like what we actually do and who we work with, right? So as an organization, we believe that no matter the challenge, no matter the odds, together we can find a way. And our work in the space of animal ag is primarily based on that belief. So we aim to reduce the climate impact, the impact on nature of livestock production. And we know that we cannot do that alone. So we partner with key stakeholders along the value chain, whether it is dairy or beef. And so we work with the producers, the farmers, the ranchers, the feed and crop advisors, the cooperatives, and both the input and downstream companies. And broadly, our ag work, I can put it into two different buckets. One, you can say a company-funded project, and other one is public-funded projects like funding from federal or state government. So what we do, we help farmers implement new practices on the ground, help them change an existing practice, or sometimes help them adopt an innovative technology that could provide climate and nature benefits. And we do that in various ways. One, for example, is that by co-developing a pool of options or interventions with those stakeholders, which could be tailored to individual farm needs, right? Or by some unlocking corporate funding as well as public funding and giving our farmers any easier access to that funding in the form of incentives or a cost share program. Also, we engage with the co-ops, the farm advisors, the nutritionists, the veterinarians, and create a pool of technical resources that is required for the changes on the ground. And we also create and support creating farmer-led groups that could facilitate peer-to-peer learning, which is really, really important for successful scaling. So in addition to that, we also try to answer some questions that are relevant to creating enabling conditions for the implementation of certain practices. And we do that by unlocking public funding and leveraging the network of stakeholders that we currently have. And this piece of the work is really important because it includes on-farm demonstrations. So how things are going to look like in real world, right? And then that ensures that any changes that are made on farm is not detrimental to the production or to animal or human health. And it should lead to some sort of net economic benefit for the farms, right? So our goal is to try to work with multiple stakeholders to create a win-win situation for everyone so that a sustainable change in the right direction is possible. And a classic example of that is our Feeding Focus program, a dairy program that we have currently in the US. And in that program, we are working with multiple actors across the supply chain to make the sustainability journey easier as well as meaningful for everyone involved.
No, that's great. And that actually covered, you brought up several things that it's a point I really wanted to address, that a lot of times, when I'm at different meetings or conferences or, part of the crowd that I run with, so to speak, the notion of these NGOs, some people have a sense, sometimes it's implicit, but sometimes they say it out loud, that the NGOs are just out to get us, right? Like it's these activists that they want to put farmers out of business. Like they don't, and so I have to try to explain sometimes that, well, not all NGOs are alike. And there are different kinds of agendas that are out there. But so can you guys talk to a little bit? You talked about trying to find win-win situations, not specific to TNC, or you can talk about TNC, but what about this idea of whose side are you guys really on?
Well, I guess like we hear that kind of statement from our the farmers or the nutritionists that what we work with, and we hear that primarily. I mean, when you meet with them first time. So,
Mm.
and again, it could be like a really fair assumption from their side, um, but the reality is that once we start working with them, the word of mouth travels and then the doors open. So when it is an issue for our work, but to be sure, it's really one that's quickly going away, and people start realizing that that is not the case for all the NGOs. And like our TNC, we want to work with the animal ag community or the ag community to resolve the issues that we all are facing here in the US, but also globally. And that comes, I believe, because of the trust or the mutual benefits. In recent years, as I mentioned, that we have grown exponentially as a team, particularly the ag team. And then we hire farm kids, right? We hire like agronomist Kelly. I'm an animal scientist. We have also certified crop advisors. So we hire from the community, from the ag community, who actually know what's going on there on the ground, and they have very good understanding of the challenges or the pain points for the farming community. Right? Farmers are already doing a lot of great things, so they are trying to make things more efficient within the resources with the resources that they currently have. But like having that sort of folks as part of our team, that has changed a lot in terms of like our relationship and our like working relationship with the animal ag community. So yeah, you're right. We hear that as well, but that scenario is changing, and we are experiencing that already.
Well, and you mentioned the win-win part of it as well. And I think, maybe if it's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of a win-win-win. In other words, obviously you're trying to help nature, you're trying to help farmers though. And a lot of times people ask about a definition of sustainability, and I typically have to say something, well, it also includes economic sustainability. Like you can't go broke. It's not going to be sustainable if everybody goes out of business doing it. And then you guys work with corporations too, though, and so it needs to be a win for. I don't know if you want to name any of your name partners or others, but what is it that drives some of the downstream consumers and brands and others to work with TNC to help connect them with the agriculture community?
I think there's probably a lot of reasons why they want to work with us, including that, as Partha has mentioned, we have a very deep and technical expertise in a lot of topics related to sustainability. So working with an NGO can lend a little bit of credibility to some of the things that they're trying to do. From our perspective, we want to work with the private sector, and that includes, I think, for us, the businesses of farms and ranches and fisheries. We want to work with these folks because of this great influence that they have over the state of nature and how humans are interacting with nature. So, we see that these folks have a great ability not only to create that impact that we want to see, but also to get that impact to scale. So it's beyond just the borders of one individual farm that's doing the right things. By working with some of these folks, we can get these practices on all of our acres across the US and across the globe, to really start seeing some changes in some of these global crises that we're seeing, especially when it comes to climate and biodiversity, which is a real focus for TNC.
Great. You also talked about the reasons for the science and the expertise, and also some of the credibility that other, the downstream customers, the people that actually consume, they're actually serving animal products to people, right? Whether it's in a grocery store or in a branded package or a restaurant or something like that. Um, what, when we think about sustainability going forward, do you think what should the animal agriculture industry expect in terms of increasing sustainability, and is that going to necessarily impact the profitability or growth negatively of people in animal agriculture?
Yeah, I guess the animal farming, um, it's not a job or a business, right? So it is the way the farmers and the ranchers they live their life. However, we expect them to make changes, adopt new practices, adopt new technologies, right? So they cannot do that um, if they would not have the resources to provide food and support, provide support to their families, right? So a successful sustainability program is something that creates opportunities, or as I mentioned, the win-win situation for all actors along the food value chain. So as more and more companies they integrate sustainability into their business model, and by the way, that is something that TNC helps companies with. So we do expect more influx of fund and incentives to implement those climate-friendly interventions on farms, and they can get paid for generating, for example, the carbon benefits, right? And not only companies, the governments are also allocating a lot of funds to improve the sustainability of animal agriculture, or in general, overall agriculture, which could be seen as additional revenues for adopting practices that will provide climate benefits, and not just the climate benefit, but the water, the biodiversity, overall nature benefits, right? So, in addition to those financial benefits, we expect to see a system level change, not just in terms of adopting new practices, but also the mindset. So farmers and the ranchers, they're always very smart, right? So they do what they could do with the resources they have. I already mentioned it, but many of them already realized, and more on their way to realizing that by adopting a sustainable way of farming, by adopting regenerative agriculture practices, they are making sure that they're leaving plenty of good resources for their next generation to do farming with. So we do expect more profit, more financial as well as social benefit, not only for the current but also the future generation of farmers. However, I would like to add that nothing is easy. And it does not mean that even though we expect to see more and more benefit, it does not mean that there will not be some near term challenges or losses or some business risk, which always happen when we try anything new, right? But the key is to find the good partners, the right time, who can take some of that risk away and make sure that the farmers can learn from each other. And again, I would go back to that our feeding focused dairy program in the US, which is again an example where we are trying to do that. We are trying to help farmers to make changes, to implement something new on the ground, but that comes with a risk and initial investment. And we have partners in the project who are kind of helping farmers to take that initial risk of it. So that way they can try something new, they realize the benefit, and they continue doing that.
You talked about the mindset of the farmers a moment ago, and then you also talked about, I think both of you maybe have corporate engagement in your title or part of the engagement team, and you mentioned helping companies with their sustainability strategies. What do you see as the trend in terms of the mindset of the people at the companies with whom you work as well?
I think that generally sustainability issues are becoming more and more important for folks at companies. Part of that is driven by, the broader demands of the consumer and society. I think as, some of these challenges have become impactful in more people's lives. They want to try to see companies making changes to try to address them and to help them weather some of these storms that we're facing right now. And I think that companies, want to try to do the right thing, not just for their own profitability, but also for the benefit of the communities that they're serving with their products and services, right? And so I just see that as becoming more and more important. I don't know if everybody feels that way, but it's certainly a big topic of conversation for us on a daily basis.
That's what I hoped you would say, right? As somebody who works for a company that works with other companies, sometimes it's good to hear it directly from the people who are from the nonprofit organizations and what you see from the other from the other side of the desk, so to speak. Are there other things that you think if you were thinking about people that are actually out in feed mills or animal barns or things like that, that should know about the work that you and your NGO peers do as well?
I would just say that in addition to what Kelly said and I mentioned before, that by now, I believe we all understand that if we want to maintain food security in the US, but also globally, we cannot rely on one type of food source, right? So we have to continue raising animals to produce nutritious food. And when you do that, you have to use natural resources, right? And there will be some impact on climate or nature. So we have to find a way how we can minimize that impact, or sometimes, if possible, eliminate that impact. However, this is a complex issue, right? Which cannot be resolved by one or two partners. So all stakeholders at different layers of the food value chain, including the government, need to work together. So it is important that we make sure the forces are not pulled in different directions. Rather, forces are pulled together to channelize towards the right direction. And we consider the animal ag community, our farmers, the ranchers, the farm advisors, nutritionists, and veterinarians, all a key partner in this effort with us.
Kelly, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the idea that everybody has a part to play is really important here. I think there's things that everyone can do, whether that's big or small. They all add up to the kind of impact that we're trying to achieve here at TNC. We know that also, though, that as Partha has mentioned, people can't accomplish those changes on their own. So even sometimes making small changes means that you need some help from others. So I think if we're talking to some of the specific actors in this supply chain and these animal ag supply chains, our best recommendation is just to identify, those actions, no matter how big they are, that can start to make a difference and who can help you achieve them. And then get started, that's all it takes.
That's a great message. And one final question that I'd like to ask, and then, but you can think about if there's anything else that you want to share before we sign off here. But a while ago, Kelly, you used the term steward, and I think that that's something a lot of times sustainability immediately gets some caution flags up with a lot of people in the ag community. But stewardship is something that people think a lot more about. And Partha, you talked about how you have to earn the trust of the people in the agriculture industry. So, are there things about this in terms of talking about sustainability, or the way that you position sustainability as stewardship, or what are some of the other ways that you try to build trust with the agriculture community when you work with them?
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like, you cannot always expect that you would use the same language to different group of folks, right? So you really need to assess the situation there. And sustainability is a term that I think most people know at this point, which was not the case maybe 10 years or even 5 years back. But to some folks, that is still a new thing, right? A lot of people, they might have heard the term, but they may not know what sustainability means. So I guess when you are talking about building the trust or helping them change the mindset. I think tweaking the language, the way you communicate sustainability, that is really important. As I was saying, is that for the farming community, maybe for a part of the farming community, for them, what they're leaving, or maybe the whole farming community, what they're leaving behind for their future generation, that is really important, right? So even if we don't mention the term sustainability in our conversation with them, if we just say, this will, maintain or improve the soil health of the land that you have on your farm, which is really, really important because you need to grow crop, right? If you are raising animals, you need to grow crop and feed. And without very good soil health, you won't be able to do that the way you are expecting it to do, right? So, which will have negative impact on your economic aspect of your farming, but also it will contribute more and negative impact on climate, right? So you don't need to always use the terminology sustainability. Depending on the group that you are talking with, you need to use a term that better resonate with what they are doing and what they are at the end of the day trying to achieve in their business or in their day-to-day work.
I lied to you. I thought of one more question that I wanted to ask from my side, but talk more about TNC's point of view on the incorporation of animals in agriculture. Like what's important about them as part of the agriculture system rather than removing animals from the agriculture system?
Yeah, that's a tough question, David. I think as Partha mentioned, at TNC here, we recognize that there are there's a lot of different complex factors that go into the answer to that question. And I think that we can't deny that there are negative impacts of a lot of activities that happen in multiple agriculture supply chains. And what we're hoping is that we can work together with folks to minimize those impacts or eliminate those impacts as much as possible. We know that it's not possible necessarily to completely change the biology of a cow, though. So how can we, work with farmers to implement some practices that might offset some of that impact, that might help to reduce that impact, and just make that as small as possible?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Kelly said. As I mentioned before, we need to find a balance because our global population is not decreasing, right? So, and we have limited resources. So, if we rely on just one type of food sources, that might not be enough to maintain the food security. But at the same time, we have to make sure that how we can minimize and where possible eliminate the impact on the climate or the nature. So finding that fine balance is what I guess we all are trying to figure out.
That's good. Well, any last thoughts from you, Kelly?
No, it's been great talking to you, David, and really glad to see you do this series, this podcast series. We're always excited to talk about sustainability issues and try to get that up to the top of folks' minds.
Great. Thanks very much. How about you, Partha?
Yeah, no, thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity. We already do work a lot with the production animal ag community. And this was a great opportunity for us to kind of share some of that, what we are doing that, how we are doing it, and what is the motivation behind it. So we enjoy working with the animal ag community, and we would like to continue doing that over the next several years. So thank you, and I appreciate that.
Great. Well, thank you to you both for taking the time out of your day to join me here on this. I really appreciate it as well. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next Sustainable Ag Summit or something like that.
Sure.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks again. Great talking with you.
Thank you.